Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, and welcome to my show. My name is MadisonStarMoon. The planet is in a state of emergency, and we need to go to the ER. From ExecutiveReasoning.com, I'd like to welcome my guest to the show. ER has outlined a nonviolent plan of defense against the chemical spraying planes that just might stop the chemtrails once and for all. Hi, ER. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thanks for coming on again tonight. We had some technical difficulties last night, an echo on the show, so I wanted to go ahead and do another show so we could recap the highlights from last night. So if you want to go ahead and start off by telling everybody what your amazing plan is, you can just start from the beginning.
Sure, okay. Well, I think everybody kind of agrees that we are being sprayed. I think everybody will agree that it is an inhumane act on a civilian population, and that is by definition a crime against humanity. So in Canada, if you read Section 4 of the Crimes Against Humanity and War Crimes Act, an inhumane act on a civilian population or an omission, that is a crime under that act, and the punishment is life in jail if there's death and life in jail if there's no death. So it's a crime. You don't go to the dog doctor, you don't go to a lawyer, you don't go to a teacher, and you don't go to, somebody that works at a bank when there's a crime in progress or a crime that's been committed or a crime that's about to be committed. And generally, because it's got to do with aircraft and airports, you don't hop the fence either. I mean, if the cops aren't doing it, maybe we have lawful excuse to do that. But generally, we go to the police. Now, because it's a crime that's been committed, the cops have to be involved. And the police have a duty to protect life and preserve the peace and protect property. And with the spraying that's going on, it's affecting photosynthesis with plants, the production of oxygen and sugar in the plant, oxygen for the world and sugar in the plant. And blockage of the sun also affects photosynthesis, vitamin D production in the skin. So these are all related to health and life. So the police duties are to protect life, and so therefore they have to act on this. Now, if you go to Arrestmcom/Vancouver or Arrestmcom/Toronto, there's documents there that have already been done. All you have to do is print them and just send them basically to any cop anywhere. It doesn't matter if it's in your jurisdiction or not. They will understand what's written on the document. Plus, there's names on the document. So you can make these people famous for prosecution because these people have been notified and failed to act. And criminal negligence is, by definition, failing to act when there's a duty. And the duty of police officers is to protect life. So instead of me hopping the fence and you hopping the fence to try to figure out what's on board those aircraft, or what's going into the airports or air bases through deliveries, we would get maybe shot or tased or beaten up or whatever, or killed.
You'd get shot all right.
So what we need to do is we need the cops to do that for us. I mean, they're supposed to by law. That's their duty to protect life. Okay, so we need to go to the cops instead of me and you hopping the fence. And if you don't want to do anything other than just post on Facebook and do nothing else, then don't ever complain. You go to the cops, and if you don't want to go to the cops, then you hop the fence. Now, the easy thing to do, you can do it anonymously, is just print the documents on the website, Arrestmcom/Vancouver or Arrestmcom/Toronto, and put a stamp on the envelope, and you don't put your return address, and just mail it anonymously to any cop. Any cop. Just call up the police station, get a name and a badge number and their address, and just mail it to them. This way, nobody knows who did it. You got to go to the cops. You don't go to your neighbor. You don't go to the pet vet. You don't go to your banker. You go to the police. It's a crime in progress. It's a crime that's been committed, and it's very likely a crime that's about to be committed. And cops have full abilities to trespass anywhere to protect life under common law.
Okay, now what happens if the police do not respond to, our formally filed paperwork?
Okay, well, if you've mailed it to a specific officer with a specific badge number, and you can follow up asking if they've done anything, although, you may not want to do that. But if you have followed up, then create another piece of paper with the name of that police officer who failed to act, and go to another police officer asking that new police officer to charge the first police officer with criminal negligence as well as crimes against humanity for failing to act. And if that police officer, that new police officer, won't do anything, you go to another police officer with another piece of paper with the previous named cops. Eventually, if there's a city with 10,000 cops in it, if you get up to, number 700th of the cop, eventually some of these people are not going to sleep well at night because they're going to wonder whether they're going to be in jail or their pensions are going to be gone or their job's going to be gone, and maybe their boats are going to be gone, their house is going to be gone, their kids' education is going to be gone, etc. So you got to go to the cops. They have the legal and lawful duty to protect life, and this is destroying life.
I think a lot of the police officers do not understand that they have this authority. How do we convince police officers that believe they can't do anything about what's going on in the sky, or they can't go onto military bases?
They should read the laws. Like, for example, if you read in Canada the Supreme Court decision of Deadman versus the Queen, paragraph number 14 basically states by the Supreme Court judge that the common law duties of a police officer, basically in the Police Services Act even says so, that a police must protect life and property and preserve the peace. So police officers just need to read the law.
Can't the military stop police officers from coming onto the base?
Maybe they can, but the police officer does have legal and lawful authority at common law. If the police officer believes a crime's been committed, or if a crime is about to be committed, or a crime is being committed, a police officer has the ability to trespass.
Okay. Let's talk about the airports for a minute. Now, you were discussing last night about how we need to be well aware of the trucks and things that are going in and out of the airports. How do we go about this?
Well, there's a couple of ways to do it. Just go to an airport, to the gates where transport trucks go in or trains go in, and if there's underground, try to figure out where the underground is, and just politely ask people that are making deliveries what's in there. Are there chemtrail chemicals? What's in there?
Yeah.
And if you're
ahead.
given resistance, that's kind of good, because maybe the cops will come. And if the cops come, well, perfect. You've got the cops at the airport. Say, sir, Mr. or Mrs. Police Officer, can you go inside the airport and make sure there's no chemicals being delivered for chemtrail spraying, and make sure each plane that takes off has no chemtrail chemicals on board. And anybody that's landed, maybe you should check them too. Sir, ma'am.
Right. I think a lot of people are going to be too afraid to do this. So let's backtrack. Let's start from the beginning. So they go to the Arrestmcom/chemtrails, right? And that's where the documents
Toronto
are?
or /Vancouver.
Oh, okay. And so you've already filled out the first, 2 stages?
Well, a whole bunch of stages, actually. If you just look, you'll be amazed at the amount of cops, as well as lieutenant governors. So lieutenant governors, they're Her Majesty, or they're the top cats of your jurisdiction.
There you go. Her Majesty. Can we call her something else?
Well, for Canada, it's Her Majesty, and for the U.S., I'm not quite sure what it is. I still think it's Her Majesty.
Yeah, Her Majesty
ultimately.
Just doesn't fit, but you know what I mean. Okay. All right, so we go onto the website and we print up the documents, and then we just add a name in of a police officer that we have informed?
Sure. Just send, if you know of a police officer, write their name on every page, because on every page is going to be anyways names of other police officers that failed to act. So basically we want the cop to act on the information, and we also want the cop to arrest those that are named.
Okay. And this would also work for people that have reported this to the FAA or other federal agencies, EPA. We can take their names as well and put this on the same documents and give this to the police. Because the EPA is also guilty of omission.
They're guilty of omission of not reporting a crime. They don't have a gun and a badge, so they really can't, trespass anywhere. But a cop can.
Right. Okay, so I think for the lay person that's just starting off in this movement, or someone that just wants to maybe do it anonymously, this is a good way to do it. I think approaching airports is where it starts getting a little shady. People are afraid that they're going to get arrested and stuff like that, and the last thing we want is for people to get into trouble trying to help the environment or trying to stop us from being sprayed.
Yeah, I agree. It could be a scary thing, but the thing is, if everybody shows up in white clothes, for example, with nothing on them other than identification, and they gather, the police will come, and then you just peacefully ask the police, "Sir, ma'am, can you tell me what's on that aircraft? Is it going to be spraying chemicals on board?" Eventually, we're going to have to do that if the spraying keeps getting worse and worse and worse, which it is. But having said that, if you don't want to go to the airport, print the document, put a stamp on an envelope, and send it. Don't put your return address. Send it to any cop.
Right.
Send it to 5 cops.
Yeah, I would definitely put my address and my name on it because I'm proud to tell the police about chemtrails. I'm proud to speak to government officials. I mean, it's an honor to bust these people. I mean, so if anybody doesn't want to do it, I do understand, and I appreciate your, concern for your family or whatever position you hold. But honestly, we're running out of time, folks.
Yeah.
So we have to come up with some type of plan. This is nonviolent. This is legal, by the book, and we are going to the people that are allegedly our authorities.
Yeah. And instead of going to the courts, because in the courts you could be 15 years in the courts. Whereas a crime's already in progress, a crime's been committed, and a crime's about to be committed. You don't need to go to the courts for that. The judge does not have the ability to basically arrest anybody. I mean, the judge could, acting as a citizen, but the police have the duty to do so, and a failure to do your duty is criminal negligence, Section 219 of the Canadian Criminal Code. So we only need to go to the cops. You don't go to anybody else other than just somebody with a gun and a badge who has an oath to protect the public.
Okay, so let's say we've done this over a period of a few months, and we continue to send them the documents, but we don't get any results. What do we do at that point?
You find another cop.
Okay.
And if that one doesn't do anything, you
report
report
all
that
of our
cop.
options for police officers.
Yeah, you go through all of them. Eventually, you're going to get an honest cop, and eventually some of these cops are going to say, yeah, you know what, we've got to do something. I might go to jail if I don't.
Let me ask you this. Okay, so say we've informed 50 police officers, and none of them have done anything. Can't we go up the ladder to, like, federal police or something like that? I mean, can we go up the ladder to something higher than a police officer and report the police officers that have not done their job to investigate these crimes we're trying to report to them?
You only want to go to people who have the duty to arrest.
Right.
You don't want to go to a politician.
What about the FBI?
Sorry?
What about the FBI?
If they have a duty to arrest, yes. If they have a duty, you got to read what their duties are. We don't need to go anywhere except the police. The police have the duty to preserve life and preserve the peace and protect life. So if you've gone to 50 cops, go to another one. If you've gone to 70, go to another one. If you've gone to 7,000 and you got 10,000 in your city, go to another one. Eventually, there's going to be honest cops, and they're going to band together because they're going to see this. They will band together. And the more of them that see this, the more that they're going to form their own clan and group, and they're going to have a plan of action to actually stop this. Because
how long have you been building this
an honest cop is eventually going to arrest a non-honest cop.
Okay. I'm sorry, but I just don't have a lot of faith in the police department, considering I went to the state police, and I've spoken to them in person, gone to the Virginia Beach Police Department. I mean, that's why I don't have any faith. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to do this. In fact, I have used your plan, and you know that because we've contacted them back, and with the federal agencies, we've sent them these documents, and they just basically say, oh, that has nothing, you just sent me some paperwork that has nothing to do with anything, or they'll say they didn't get the files and this, that, and the other. So there are a lot of elements to this plan that they are blocking. And so we've got to figure out ways around the little loopholes.
I still say print documents, send them to cops. Do not have verbal conversations with police officers. Make it a court of record. Okay? They have a record. They have a piece of paper with names and everything else on it. And you've also reported the previous cops that did nothing, and you're reporting them too. So you're asking the new cop to arrest the previous cop that you reported it to, and the ones previous to that, and the ones previous to that. You're always asking for the previous cop to be arrested, and you're asking for protection, public protection, witnessed by the public 24/7 at airports and air bases, open to the public.
I asked you earlier, how long have you been developing this plan?
Well, I developed it a few years ago, and I've only done it a couple of times because once you do the chief's offices and once you do the superintendents and the inspectors, those are done. You just need people to just now send them in to the beat officer on the street. It's just a matter of people doing that. And if there's 1,000 cops in your city and you've gone to 50 of them, go to the 51st. Have someone else do another 50.
Right, but if we're not getting a response from our paperwork that we're sending to them, I mean, how will we know what they've done?
Well, the cops are going to talk to each other.
If we're not getting responses from them, don't we need to speak to them?
The cops are going to talk to each other. We're all going to have records of names that we've put on documents. Eventually, all of those records are going to be eventually in a court of law with names on them, names of police officers. So, like I said, you don't do anything other than paperwork because the courts are it's a court of records, paper. And if you have names of cops that did nothing, they will be criminal defendants. But if you say, I went to cop...
so I have like 100 criminal defendants, already. So if I put their names on these documents and I still get no response, can't I then take those documents like down to the courthouse and say, I've already reported this crime? Yeah, you can do it as a private prosecution. You go to the justice of the peace with all your information, and you notify the justice of the peace with your information that you would like to charge all of these police officers with criminal negligence and Section 4 crimes against humanity. Okay.
But you need paperwork with names on it.
Right.
No more verbal. So if there's a city with 10,000 cops.
I have those. I mean, I've been filling out my formally filed complaints on EPA.gov/tips for years. There's a paper trail leading to me for years. So couldn't I then take those files as well, along with the other paperwork, and have a total case?
Yeah, sure. Just bring it to a police officer and ask the police officer to deal with them. And if that police officer doesn't do anything, then you go to another police officer with the information you just gave that first police officer and ask that second police officer to arrest that first police officer and for public protection.
But they're not going to arrest each other. If you're thinking that they will, they're not going to.
They do. They have.
They protect their own.
You have seen cops arrest cops when a cop commits murder.
I haven't personally, no.
Well, the cop in Toronto that killed Sammy Yatin was arrested by cops.
Okay.
Cops will arrest cops.
This is a conspiracy that's secret, covered up, and nobody's admitting to it.
That's okay. Go to the cops. We have no choice. Go to the cops. Otherwise, we have to hop the fence ourselves. I'm not going to hop the fence.
Right. I
know. So I'm going to get the cop to hop the fence.
I'm throwing all the questions at you that anybody might have. I totally agree with your plan, but I'm playing devil's advocate here.
You know what? If for those who don't want to do anything, you go to the airport yourself, hop the fence, get on board the aircraft, and tell me what's in there, and see how far you go.
Right.
Otherwise, don't complain, or get a cop to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's their duty, and if they're not doing their duty, it's criminal negligence.
Yeah. When I went to a police officer before, he told me that he didn't even know that he had he gave me the impression that he didn't know he had any authority over the military to do anything about this. He said, I can't do anything that's above the ground. So, that's the impression that they get. When I called the sheriff's office, she didn't even know what is it called? What's it called when they get act?
I don't know.
Act of common law. Sorry about that.
Yeah, common law,
She didn't even know what common law was.
Yeah,
so, these police officers aren't really the sharpest tools in the shed when it comes to the law themselves, which is ironic.
If you read the Police Services Act of Ontario, it's clear. The police officer, Section 42, subsection 3, a police officer can act at common law as a constable. A police officer can act at common law as a constable or something like that. And common law basically says if there's harm, it doesn't matter if it's in the sky or on the water, in your bathtub, on a trampoline, and you've jumped above the ground on a trampoline. If there's a crime being committed, a cop can be there. It doesn't matter. There's no jurisdiction. If there's a crime, there's a crime. Cops have to act. It's their duty to protect life.
Right.
Blocking the sign is an inhumane act on the civilian population.
The key to this working, though, is going to be if a lot of people do it, right?
Well, theoretically, you should only have one person having an effect. I mean, if somebody's coming to stab you from behind you and I see it, I call the cops. We don't need 50,000 people for the cops to respond. They'll come right away because you're reporting a crime in progress.
We're asking them to respond to something that doesn't exist, allegedly.
Oh, it does exist. You look up in the sky, right?
Right, but I'm saying there's a big difference between calling the cops and saying there's a man with a knife about to stab a woman and calling the cops and saying there are chemtrails in the sky because they are just told it's contrail.
Well, that's why if you read the documents that I'm asking people to print, it's clear that those are not contrails. It's clear that they're chemicals. It's clear.
Yeah,
just
chemicals
read the
coming
document.
out of what, nozzles? Yeah, let's talk about the nozzle trails now.
Yeah. But you got to read the document. The document makes it clear that it's not a contrail.
Oh, I'm so frustrated. I'm sorry, but the chemtrail agenda really gets under my skin. And the fact that you and I are even having to have this conversation and trying to convince people to help us is really frustrating. But I'm going to try to hold it together. I want you to discuss with everybody about the converted aircraft, the nozzles, that this is not coming out of the engine.
Yeah, there's nozzles on the pylon, and the pylon is basically the vertical thing, like a strut, that attaches the engine to the wing. If you look on pretty much every aircraft, you'll see nozzles on the pylon in line with output exhaust. And if you look at the materials of surrounding the nozzles, it's almost like a stainless steel color, different in color of the rest of the plane that's painted. And so I'm saying that that's where the spray is coming from, because the high bypass turbofan jet engine is basically nothing but an Everglades airboat. Yeah, I mean, you do have a turbine, rotating the spinning blades, but those blades are massive. It's like an Everglades airboat. Up to 90% of the thrust is from the spinning blades, not from the actual turbine. And if you look at propeller planes and other aircraft, they use the same kind of turbine, yet you don't see trails from those kinds of engines. So it's got to do with the nozzles.
Yeah. And I also want to make a point that if you guys think that these emissions are coming out of the engines, what about the chemtrails that we see that are going off and on? Does that mean that the engine is turning off and on in the middle of the sky?
I mean that's what a cop should think, right? If the cop says, well, that's a contrail, well, that would mean that you have some kind of engine trouble. And if that's the case, don't fly, everybody. Don't fly.
Right.
But
and what about
clear.
the U-turns? They're doing U-turns and stuff,
yeah,
so that's not a normal flight path.
No,
it's not. Can you discuss flight paths and explain what a normal flight path is?
I live in an area where there's only one flight path over my house. And it's a low-altitude flight path, low-elevation flight path. There's only two kinds of flight paths. There's low elevation and high elevation. Low elevation is below 18,000 feet. High elevation is above 18,000 feet. Depending on, if you live in the U.S. or Canada, you might recognize the 401 as a major highway in Canada, or the Trans-Canada Highway, or Highway 75 or 95 in the U.S. Those would be equivalent to the high elevation routes versus Main Street, a low elevation route. So I'm just kind of using some kind of an example to distinguish. There's two kinds of highways in the sky. One is below 18,000 feet, and the other one is above 18,000 feet. I'm in a flight path that it's a departure corridor, and aircraft that are over my house are about 12,000 feet, which is not high enough or cold enough for any kind of supposed condensation trail, and yet we do have trails at that along that flight path. I have no high altitude, high elevation flight paths over my house. They're way far away from my house, yet I have trails directly over my house from another angle. So their aircraft are flying off a flight path. And if they're flying at 35,000 feet or 40,000 feet with zero humidity up there, you should not get any kind of contrail at all, because when you have any kind of moisture out the back just from heat and condensing, you have moisture into a 0% humidity environment. That's like having a nice clean white toilet bowl with some one drop of red dye. The red dye just diffuses massively. So diffusion is what happens way up at 35,000 feet. Any kind of condensation that you may get rapidly diffuses, because if you actually are smoking a cigarette and somebody puts a really strong fan in front of your face as you're smoking the cigarette, the trail from your cigarette just completely disperses quickly, rapidly. That would be the same thing as the high bypass turbofan engine, with the fan doing about 90% of the thrust. So any kind of condensation that may come out of there, if there is, will be quickly blown away and diffused into the environment as moisture in a 0% humidity moisture environment. So you have massive diffusion. So trails should never linger. If there is any kind of condensation trail, they should be gone in a second or 2 or 3 or something like that. Not last, for 55 minutes or 55 hours and then block the sun every day.
Does the temperature change at 35,000 feet?
It's quite uniform. The humidity and temperature at 35,000 feet is quite uniform every day. The humidity is near zero.
All right, so technically if an airplane is making a chemtrail one day, it should make a chemtrail the next day and every day, right?
That's right. So
the days when you don't see chemtrails are actually the smoking gun.
That's right. That's right. Like there are days when you see blue sky, but not much. It's only for a few hours. So we're what? There's no airplane traffic? Sorry, there's tons of aircraft traffic.
Right. Now, what about these the coagulation of the sky and these ripples that we're seeing? Do you believe that's from the death towers and the HAARP waves and everything?
Well, I'm not sure about the death towers because I think the death towers are like 2.4 gigahertz, which are microwave oven frequencies and cell phone frequencies. Those frequencies look like they're really low frequencies, like ELF, extremely low frequencies. So maybe they have something to do with HAARP or something like that. I don't know enough about it, but I mean, clearly moisture doesn't kind of do any kind of standing waves. Only matter that is polar to any strong degree will look like it's performing some kind of a standing sine wave.
Right. Okay, we have 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So, I mean, we pretty much got the meat and potatoes of what you're proposing to us. I'm going to make a deal. I'm going to go tomorrow. I'm going to print up the documents yet again for the third time, and I'm going to deliver them. I'm going to hand deliver them to the police station. Okay, I'm going to go to my local police station and hand deliver them. Now, how long do I wait to get a response?
Well, if you're going to hand it to somebody specific, get their name and badge number, and if nothing is done within 2 or 3 days, then report that person with the documents that you gave that person and ask the next cop to arrest that previous cop.
Okay.
And boy, it'd be nice if we could get lined up at the police station.
Yeah. Right. It's going to be a long process, but we have to be dedicated because this might be the only way we can stop these freaks. They're spraying us day and night. You guys know this, and we've tried everything. So, I mean, why not try one more thing?
Yeah, I mean, otherwise it's going to be you or me or someone else hopping the fence and getting shot. No, we need the cops to trespass legally and lawfully.
Yeah. Okay, so we have 1 minute and 20 seconds. I want you to go ahead and promote these websites again where everybody can find this information.
Arrestm.com/Toronto or Arrestm.com/Vancouver. They're basically the same website. Just print anything on there. Give it to any and every cop. Okay? They'll get it doesn't matter which country you're in. They'll get the point. So even if it sounds like, it's written for Canada, or if it sounds like it's written for the U.S. and you're not in Canada or the U.S., just print it and hand it to a cop at anywhere on earth. They will understand the point.
Okay. I'd also like to let everybody know that we actually did this entire broadcast last night. It was an hour long. We went into graphic detail of each of these subjects, and it's on TruthCat Radio. There was an echo on it, unfortunately, because Skype is whack. And Skype is, totally ridiculous. But we're working through the kinks, and it is a good show. So you can see that on TruthCat Radio on YouTube, and you can hear our entire broadcast. Again, I want to thank you, ER, for coming on again to propose this idea, which I think is an awesome idea, and possibly the only way we're going to stop these freaks. Anything else you'd like to say? You have 10 seconds.
Yeah, go to the cops or hop the fence yourself.
Thank you so much. All right. And on that note, look up, wake up, and my pleasure, and do something.
Bye.